بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So as you know, this discourse is based upon the book, Who Are the Blind Followers? We started it last week. We've done some sections, some subjects, which you can see. It will come on the screen. Yeah. We've done what is taqleed and who is a muqallid, who is a person who does taqleed. We explained that section. What is ijtihad and who is a mujtahid? Kindly explain taqleed through a practical example. How does a scholar qualify as a mujtahid? So how can one become a mujtahid where you can derive masail, rulings from Quran, directly from Quran and Hadith? The explanation of Imam Shafi rahimahullah in terms of who can perform ijtihad, who is it permissible for to do ijtihad, derive from Quran and Hadith directly. And he gave many conditions. He must meet many criterias. But in explaining taqleed, last week I said I'm going to quote some scholars who say in terms of taqleed, what's the ruling? It might come later on, but some of the quote I did research maybe a couple of years ago. I thought I will share it with you about in terms of taqleed. Some people say like taqleed, blindly following a scholar, shows directly from Quran and Hadith. And we did quote some verses from the Quran and Hadith from the Quran. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and the verse in Juz 11, وَمَا كَانَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ لِيَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً, the whole verse, we went through it. But in terms of scholars, what do they say? Taqlid. To be honest, taqlid is common sense. To follow a scholar, an expert, and we gave a practical example about someone who's a doctor and patient following the doctor. So it is common sense, so there's no need for having the burden of proof. But what do scholars say in terms of following an imam of a madhab? What did the great scholars, what did they say? So I wanted to quote some scholars, which will be beneficial. Imam Dhahabi, who was a great Shafi'i scholar, he was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, one of the greatest students of Ibn Taymiyyah, who was a great scholar. Imam Dhahabi was in about 7th, 8th century after Hijrah. And he has wrote many books, and the Ummah have benefited and still benefiting greatly from his works. So he was a great scholar in the Shafi madhab. What does he say? He writes in his Sir A'lam al-Nubala under a scholar called Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, rahimahullah, who Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri was a scholar, and he would go by the text. He would follow literally what the hadith would state and act upon, when it's possible to act upon it literally. He would not really refer to the meaning so much. So this is Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri. He once said, I follow the truth and perform ijtihad, and I do not adhere to any madhab. So he said once, you're going to follow directly Quran and directly Hadith, and I will not follow madhab. So Imam Dhahabi, he says, I say yes. What he's saying, I say yes. Whoever has reached the level of ijtihad, whoever has reached that level where he can deduce it from Quran and Hadith, he has so much knowledge of Quran and Hadith, memorized so much and understands so much. So if he has reached that level, I say yes, meaning he doesn't need to follow a madhab, he can derive directly from Quran and Hadith. He says, I say yes, whoever has reached the level of ijtihad, and a number of imams have attested to this regarding to him. Attested to this regarding him, meaning a number of Imams have said, yes, he has reached the level of ijtihad. So a number of Imams have to say this, have to attest to it. Then it is not allowed for him to do taqleed. So if a number of Imams say this person, he has the ability to deduce from Quran and Hadith, to ijtihad directly, then he is a mujtahid, and it is not permissible for him to follow anyone else, do taqleed of anyone else. He can read directly, go back to Quran and Hadith and say, this meaning I took out, this is permissible, this is impermissible, this is sunnah, this is not sunnah. If he has reached that level, he doesn't need to follow any Imam. He doesn't need to follow Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, rahimahumullah. He has to directly do ijtihad and deduce from Quran and Hadith himself. But that's when he reaches that level, and many Imams have attested to it, he has reached that level. So for him, it is not allowed to do taqleed, blindly following. Just as it is not seeming at all for the beginner layman, jurist, who has committed the Quran to memory, or a great deal of it, to perform ijtihad. He hasn't learned so much, then it is not permissible for that layman, beginner, jurist, faqih, to do ijtihad. How is he going to perform ijtihad? What will he say? On what will he base his opinions on? How can he fly when his wings have not yet grown? So this person, he's learnt a little bit Arabic, he's learnt Arabic, he's learnt some fiqh, some hadith, some Quran. This is not permissible. It is not permissible for him to do ijtihad, for him to directly deduce from Quran and hadith. He has not learned so much, so what will he base it on? His knowledge of hadith, not so much. His knowledge of Quran is not so much. And how can he base his knowledge on Quran and hadith? And how can he fly when he has no wings? So this is Imam Dhahabi clearly stating, we cannot just get directly, if you don't have that knowledge, right, we cannot directly go to Quran and hadith and give fatwas. This another quote, Imam Ibn al-Humam. So I will go to the book in a bit. I'm just giving this few quotes and then we'll move to the book. Imam Ibn al-Humam was a very famous, very powerful, strong faqih in the Hanafi madhab. Right? He was a great scholar around, again, about 8th, 9th century time. And he says he's done a commentary of a famous Hanafi book, early Hanafi book called Hidayah. And he's done a commentary on it, and his book is called Al-Fathul Qadir. So he's the famous commentator, famous writer of this book. He says it is obligatory for him to do taqleed of a single mujtahid, the layman. As for the layman, obligatory, it has to, is compulsory for him to do taqleed, blindly follow a single mujtahid imam. The jurists have stated that the one who moves from one madhab to another by his ijtihad and evidence is sinful and deserves to be punished. He's just not saying obligatory, he's saying if he is a layman, he hasn't got so much knowledge, and if he doesn't blindly follow an imam, and he does whatever he wills, picks and chooses, he'll be very sinful. Thus, one who does so without ijtihad and evidence is even more deserving, and someone who then, that's if he has evidence. If he has evidence, some knowledge, but hasn't reached it, and he starts giving fatwa, this is permissible, this is sunnah, he is sinful. But if someone does not have knowledge, so much knowledge, and many people don't have knowledge, and start saying this is sunnah, this is permissible, this is not permissible, he is deserving of punishment even more. So this is quite dangerous for you to say, yeah, it's fine, Quran, Hadith, without going into it. Imam Nawawi, a great Imam Shafi scholar, Imam Nawawi, the Riyadus Salihin we do, Riyadus Salihin, Imam Nawawi, who was in about the 5th, 6th century at that time, 5th, 6th century, early scholar, a great Shafi scholar. He says the second view, which is more the dominant view, is that it is obligatory for him to follow one particular school. Right? So it is obligatory. You have to follow one particular school. And that was the position according to Imam Abu Hassan rahimahullah, the father of Imam al-Haramain al-Jawaini. So this is mentioned, another scholar, his opinion is this, a great Shafi scholar who came before him. And this applies to everyone who has not reached the rank of ijtihad of the jurists and scholars of the disciplines. So everyone who has not reached the level of ijtihad of these imams, then it is obligatory. He has to follow one imam, one school of thought. The reason for this ruling, so why? Why do we need to follow an imam? Obligatory, why? Firstly, we gave in terms of knowledge, he has not got enough knowledge. And secondly, the reason for this ruling is that if it were permissible to follow any school one wished, it will lead to hand-picking the dispensations of the schools and following one desires. He would pick and leave the school, the opinions of the school, and he would pick whichever he wants to follow. He would follow his desires. He would be choosing between halal and haram, and obligatory and permissible. He will choose, oh, okay, today I think this is haram, this is permissible. Today I think this is obligatory. Tomorrow he said this is not obligatory, I think this is obligatory, this is permissible. The next day he said no, this is impermissible. He'll be picking and choosing. Ultimately, that would lead to relinquishing oneself from the burden of responsibility. What's going to happen is in the end, he's going to relieve himself from the burden of responsibility. Everyone has the burden of responsibility to follow Quran and Hadith, Fiqh, right? What the Imams have explained to us. There's this burden of us to follow Quran, Sunnah, right? So what he will do, if he doesn't follow a mujtahid, he will completely go off it. That burden on you to pray namaz in a certain way, this is to follow fiqh, all that, you remove yourself from this burden. This is not the same as during the first generation. For the schools that were sufficient in terms of their ruling for new issues were neither codified nor widespread. Thus, on the basis, it is obligatory for a person to strive in choosing only one madhab which he follows. So you might say, oh, how are you saying it's obligatory? All of a sudden it's so fard, compulsory for us to follow, and before there was no madhab. Before the time of Sahaba, there was no tabi'in, there was no madhab to follow, and all of a sudden now we have to follow the same. Before it wasn't codified, there was no certain madhab, all the rulings gathered of a madhab and people had to follow. It wasn't there. Now the opinions have been codified, researched, and put into book form and has been taught. So now it has become obligatory. And we are not saying this, these are quotes of great scholars. Anyways, many scholars have said it. So if anyone says to you, oh, who said it's obligatory, that person is clueless, ignorant. Because many scholars have said it is obligatory. And like I said, firstly, it's common sense, following an expert, an imam. And then secondly, the scholars, what they have wrote in their books. So mujtahid is activity. What is the sphere of activity of a mujtahid, as you can see on the screen? The following paragraph from Adabul Ikhtilaf by Sheikh Muhammad Awama explains this question. So mujtahid, a person who does ijtihad again. What is ijtihad? A person derives rulings directly from Quran and Sunnah using his knowledge, right? So what are his activities? What does he need to do? How does he think through a process and come to a conclusion? This is permissible, this is not permissible, this is Sunnah, this is not Sunnah. He explained this. Sheikh Awama, great scholar, rahimahullah, is still alive, a very big sheikh. I think he lives in Turkey now. He's a very knowledgeable sheikh in terms of fiqh and hadith. And he says, and this is the way the experts of usul, those who take principles of jurisprudence and hadith, experts of usul and the fuqaha are unanimous that ijtihad can only be carried out in every shari'i law where there is no qat'i, indisputable evidence. So who can do ijtihad and when do they do ijtihad? Ijtihad is deriving from Quran and from hadith. So his activity of deriving, when can he do this activity of deriving from Quran and Sunnah? When there is no qat'i. Qat'i means indisputable evidence. So the evidence is clear cut. Qat'i means clear cut. If there's no clear cut evidence, for example, alcohol is haram. Okay? Alcohol has been haram, made haram upon you. This is clear cut evidence. right? That there is sin in drinking alcohol and gambling. This is clear-cut haram. No one does ijtihad. No one now uses all the knowledge, right, and all the memory power to, come to a conclusion. No, it's clear. You don't need to do ijtihad. Use your knowledge to derive in terms of ruling permissibility or impermissibility, etc. No, it's there for us to see. It's clear-cut, right? Alcohol is haram. Gambling is haram. So there is no ijtihad in that. This is okay. Then, when it's not clear cut, can you explain more? Can you explain the categories? And it is well known that proofs are divided into 4 categories. So, in terms of evidence from Quran, from Hadith, proofs are categorized into 4 sections. First one is qat'iyyu thubut wad dalala. So now this mujtahid, he needs to do ijtihad, he needs to derive from the Quran and Sunnah and what's permissible, what's not permissible, what's Sunnah, what's not Sunnah, etc. Right? So he will base it on proofs. Now, like I said, there are some proofs which are qati, indisputable, very clear. There's no ijtihad in this. But there are some where he has to do ijtihad. So first one, qat'iyyu thubut wa dalala. This one with no ijtihad is indisputable in authenticity as well as purport. Purport here, indication. In terms of its indication, it's indicating it's haram or halal. So it's indisputable, clear cut. Its authenticity, you can't dispute it. It's clear cut. It's very authentic. And in terms of the indication, what's indicating to the ruling, it's clear cut also. That's A. Then B, dhanniyu thubut wa dalala. Disputable in authenticity and purport. Purport meaning again indication. So in terms of just being authentic, there's dispute. And then the meaning you can take, meaning taken behind, the ruling taken behind is also dispute. The indication from the saying. C is qat'iyyu thubut dhanniyu dalala. Indisputable in authenticity. So you cannot dispute the authentic. Everyone knows this is very authentic, and many Sahaba have said it. And disputable in purport. Purport again indication. So disputable, you can dispute about it. Some say yes, it's clearly indicating this. Some say no, it's not indicating this. So there's dispute. And then D, qat'iyyu thubut dhanniyu dalala. Indisputable in purport, meaning you cannot dispute in terms of what's indicating. It's indicating to this. And disputable in authenticity, or in terms of its authenticity, it's disputable. Is it authentic? Is it not? Some say it is, some say it's not. So there's a dispute there. We thus conclude that ijtihad may only be performed within the last 3 categories. The last 3 where there's some part where there's where both of them are not indisputable in terms of authenticity and purport, meaning what's indicating to you, the message we can take from. So the indication and the authenticity of it, if it's qat'i, if it's indisputable, clear cut, both, then there's no ijtihad. This everyone has to follow. You don't need to explain, the ruling is clear. But other 3, where in terms of its authenticity there can be dispute, or in terms of its indication, the meaning you can take behind, right, there can be dispute. This is where the mujtahid, his job, his activity will be based upon. Okay, these evidences, and he'll look at these evidences, and he needs to now make a decision. There's dispute, there's a vague, it's not clear cut. So I need to now give fatwa. I need to give fatwa. Yeah, it's not clear cut, but this is what we derive from many verses, from the Quran, etc. As for the first category, evidence which is indisputable in authenticity as well as in purport, a law based on it does not fall within the sphere of ijtihad, since neither is ijtihad permissible within it, nor is there a scope for any difference of opinion. So first one, there's no dispute about it. In terms of its evidence, authenticity, and in terms of the indication, dalala, right, then there's no ijtihad in it. And the statement of Ibn Abidin has already been mentioned, that opposing a law based on evidence that is indisputable in authenticity and purport is disbelief. And if you do go against some verse or hadith, which is very, very famous, mutawatir, if you go against it, which the authenticity is indisputable, and in terms of what it's suggesting, also the meaning behind, it's indisputable, a person who goes against this becomes a disbeliever. Because yeah, everyone has to believe in this. There's no ijtihad there. Sheikh Awama states that Hafiz ibn Taymiyyah, great scholar, Hafiz, many ahadith, right, added the following, that and among these issues that are beyond the sphere of ijtihad is everything that the first part of the ummah had consensus about. This is precisely what is known as ijma'. So in terms of the first category, also there's ijma', where the first part of this ummah, the scholars of the first part of the ummah, they agreed on some ruling. Everyone agreed on some ruling. Okay? There's no ijtihad. Everyone, all the scholars of the first ummah agreed, you don't do ijtihad there. And you don't say, according to me, no. Everyone, they have this opinion. I have a different opinion. No, that's not permissible. There's no ijtihad in this also, he's saying. Ulama are unanimous that ijma is qat'i, indisputable proof, which can never be opposed. He's saying this. So, but sometimes this can happen. A scholar sometimes has an opinion where actually he's not supposed to, and he disagrees with the scholars in the first generation, what they agreed upon. Sometimes it can happen, and that is not permissible. Okay, so now we know when does a mujtahid does ijtihad. Okay?
So if a scholar does have one of those opinions, would it be classed as kufr?
So not ijma, it's quite dangerous. That won't be for in terms of what's in the Quran, mutawatir hadith, then ijma, it's very dangerous. Allah, I don't think it's kufr. Were the mujtahideen only four? So were there only four mujtahid, four imams? Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed Hanbal, rahimahumullah. Were there only four imams? No. Hundreds of mujtahideen existed during the first few centuries of Islam. There were so many mujtahid. Not just one imam, so many imams. Name a few other famous mujtahideen. Can you name a few more of the imams, mujtahid, who people would follow and they were so knowledgeable? So here he names a few. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, Sufyan al-Thawri, who spoke about last week, the other week, Imam al-Awza'i, Imam Abu Thawr, Ishaq ibn Rahway, Waqi' ibn Jarrah, Layth ibn Sa'ad, etc. were among the many famous mujtahideen of the past, rahimahumullah ta'ala ajma'in. These were very, very famous, very knowledgeable mujtahid who can deduce masail from Quran and Hadith, and they can, based on the incredible knowledge they had and wisdom, they could deduce and say this is permissible, this is not permissible, this is why I deduce from Quran and Hadith, etc. So he can do it from and share from his own knowledge and opinion. They were allowed, and there were so many who were allowed. In that case, why do only four madhahib exist? So there was many imams. How come only four imams? What about these other mujtahidun you mentioned? About their madhahibs? What happened to their madhahibs? This is the plan of Allah Ta'ala alone, who is the supreme master and who does as he wills. No mortal had any share in this. Nevertheless, an interesting point to note here is that once again we see this peculiar significance of the number four. There are four important angels, four important divine books, four Ashhurul Hurum, the four Khulafa Rashideen, etc. It's just a note on the side. Fours are used, at times with different things. So Allah choosing four is not far-fetched for imams to be accepted through, the Islamic, the years and centuries. Okay. Now, interesting fact, and then we'll finish off, is how did some madhabs wane away? How did they go? Who had madhabs, and how did it go away? So Allama Burhanuddin Ibrahim ibn Ali al-Makki, who died in 799 after Hijrah, gives a brief description of some of the madhahib and how they gradually waned away. He says, and the madhab of Imam Awza'i was a great scholar, and there's famous discussion and debate between Imam Awza'i and Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah on Raf'ul Dain. The madhab of Imam Awza'i rahimahullah was predominant in Sham and the island of Andalus until the madhab of Imam Malik rahimahullah took dominance after the 2nd century of Islam. Thereafter, the madhab of Imam Awza'i faded into oblivion. As for the madhahib of Hasan Basri and Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahumullah, their followers were not many, and neither did they remain for long. They didn't have many followers. So this madhab went away because another Imam madhab was so dominant. That's why he went away. And the other madhab, because they didn't have so many followers, he went away. Hence, after a short period of time, their madhahib also became extinct. As for the followers of Imam Ibn Jarir al-Tabari and Abu Thawr rahimahumullah, they were not many, nor did they last long. The followers of Abu Thawr came to an end after the 3rd century, and the followers of Tabari came to an end after the 4th century. As for Dawood al-Zahiri, his followers were many. Dawood al-Zahiri, he had many followers, right? They spread out in Baghdad and Persia, and few people in Africa and Andalus also ascribed to his madhab. However, it has very little support presently. Here, when he was writing this, he said at that time, this Imam was saying, now the Zahiri, Imam Dawood al-Zahiri, present, there's very little support. It was then. How about now? Another Imam will mention this. So this Imam is still saying, these Imams are those who the people had unanimously accepted to make taqleed of in spite of their differences in personality. The ulama also had consensus about following them, making taqleed of their madhahib, studying their books, and gaining expertise in fiqh according to the fundamentals laid down by them. They also concurred about building on their fundamentals and principles and making those principles a basis to derive the other laws. It was unanimously agreed that this would not apply to anyone else amongst their contemporaries and those who came before them for reasons that we had mentioned before. Thus, people in different parts of the world are now divided into 5 madhahib: Malikiyya, Hanbaliyya, Shafi'iyya, Hanafiyya, and Dawudiyya, who are better known as the Zahiriyya. So he's mentioning about everyone follows these Imams, no one follows other Imams, right? And there were 5. He says Zahiri one. But Allama ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah, who came just after him, died just after him, writes the following about Zahiri in his famous Muqaddimah. Presently, the madhab of Abu Ahlul Zahir has come to an end due to the extinction of its followers. The Zahir, the 5th madhab, he's saying, so who passed away 808 after Hijri, we are in 1400 Hijri, right? So his followers came to an end, madhab died and went away. We will, next time we come on after a couple of weeks, mention this, Allama Tajul Subki, what he says, and then this is so interesting the week after when we come back inshallah about if there is one Quran and one Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what is the need of different madhahib, right? Why do you have different? Let's everyone unite, one madhab, one masjid, one way of praying, one way of doing Hajj and Umrah, right? Everything, let's unite. There's no differences, and this person calling out this person, this group calling out this group. Let's all unite together and do everything the same way. Can this be possible? If not, why not? A very interesting discussion we'll have inshallah in the next discourse. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Some questions? I'm not sure if this slide thing is there. But anyways, brothers, have any questions about this, the topics we discussed?
You mentioned that except for these 4, all the other elements have died down, and the last one was Al-Zahiri. But is there any chance that even though they've died down, there's
Some of them.
some people that might still follow those.
So Zahiri, of course, this is according to Allah ibn Khaldun. Everything has to be according to your knowledge. In terms of when someone says it's died down, it's not existent, would be that scholar would say based upon knowledge he has, or people who have met and no one has met this. So it will be, of course, according to his knowledge, he's saying there's no Zahiri. Another thing would be in terms of nowadays also we have material, social media, internet, books. So you meet a lot of people online. You can access books physically or online copies, books about them, and they're not existent. So all the indications suggest that they don't exist. Wallahu alam. There could be many other groups and etc. But I'm not sure from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah besides the four. Yes, there is another madhab, you can say, a way of following, not following directly the four madhabs, which you can say Quran, Sunnah, etc. The all four madhab follow Quran and Sunnah in a different way. The other madhab might claim they're a bit different, but a lot of them say they linked to Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal, Hanbalis, so then that falls in the fourth category, fourth Imam.
So what's the original madhab?
Sorry?
Was the the original one?
Original?
Like Prophet sallallahu
Very good question. Was the original madhab? Yes. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's the main madhab everyone follows, right? And then we will discuss this more in the next couple of sessions, that those four imams, they do take from Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now sometimes, depending on what Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, sometimes he said this, sometimes later on he said something else. Now some scholars will take what he said later, some scholars will take what he said earlier, and many other different ways where you have difference of opinion than different madhabs, okay? Because of different opinions. But this is just one small example. Just a small dua, and then tea and donuts are ready. Unless any other questions? No? One more.
You mentioned about the four madhabs, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has four sacred months, four angels. For example, we also have doing circumambulation tawaf 7 times, Safa Umrah 7 times. Is there anything in Islam regarding numerology? So, for example, most famously people might see or hear or mention 786, something like that. Is there anything to do with numbers in Islam?
So,
Numerology.
yeah, scholars do sometimes, in terms of mention, like this, four angels, and then four sacred months. Then, of course, you have the four Khulafa Rashidin. There were more Khulafa Rashidin, four famous. Then we have the four Imams, which is just a note on the side. Then 40 days, you've heard of that also, 40 days. 40 days in the womb, 40 days Musa alayhi salam, Arba'ina Layla. So it's just, you take numbers, you have the numbers, and you base it on, for example, previous incidents, what's in the Quran, what's in the Hadith, and you just base it on that. It's not someone making it up, and you're just basing it upon this. So the four, based on, for example, four main angels, four main Khulafa Rashidin, so the four main Imams to get it. And then 40, you're just basing it on 40 days, Musa alayhi salam, being there, etc., 40 days in the womb. It's just basing it on. But in terms of, yeah, this is certain, no one says that. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا عاملا صالحا وحلالا طيبا ورزقا حلالا طيبا وعملا متقبلا صالحا وشفاء من كل داء. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا تخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.